Alrighty, so you've got your own country and you need a government? I've got just the thing for you, the United States Constitution. It's got a couple of years on it, but you know what? It still works. Mostly. It gets a little bit squirrely around that second gear. Let's look under the hood and see if it's got what you want. If we go back in time to after the revolution, we see a country learning to stand on its own 2 feet. A new country has emerged on the world stage, a country unlike any other in the fact that it challenged a militarily superior country and won its independence. Unfortunately, the war was the easy part. Wars have endings. Countries, by design, don't. After the war, it's decided that a new government needs creating. The Articles of Confederation just aren't cutting it. If you're a little bit rusty on the Articles of Confederation, check out Hip U's history or my video comparing the Articles to the Constitution. When drafting the Constitution, it was clear that the need for a single guiding government was necessary. But how do you establish this government and make sure that it does what the people want a government to do? In essence, you've got to let the people control it. The Constitution is broken down into 7 parts called Articles. Now I'm going to break this down over a couple of videos. In this video, we're going to discuss the purpose of government and how it's supposed to work. Later on, you'll see other videos about the amendments that change the Constitution. Check those out next. The whole point of a Constitution is to collect all the principles or ideas of your government. The United States wanted to do something different. They wanted to pull together a single document that held all the parts that we later call our Constitution. Once we wrote ours, it became a really cool idea that several countries in Europe wanted to use, once they got rid of their monarchies. First, let's talk about the Preamble. So kicking off the Constitution, you've got the Preamble.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution.
The Preamble's really just the introduction. It states the purpose for creating the Constitution. The phrasing of the Preamble is a little weird because it says in order to form a more perfect union. This implies that they know this government won't be perfect. It's just closer than the last one was. A phrase like this indicates that they expect this to be a document that can change and become closer to perfection. Additionally, the Preamble states that it's to provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and provide liberty for posterity. The idea is that this document will create a government that will take care of its people, provide freedom and liberty for generations to come. Those are some pretty lofty ideas, but we see those ideas reflected in our own Declaration of Independence as well. When the Continental Congress laid out all the ways that King George had injured them, they basically listed the things they wouldn't do to their own people. And we bring those ideas into our Constitution.
Article 1.
After the Preamble, we have to actually get into establishing the government. Specifically, a government that's built in 3 branches. Article 1 establishes Congress. It creates a bicameral legislative branch composed of 2 houses. One house, the Senate, is based on equal representation. Each state, no matter its size, gets awarded 2 senators. This means that all voting is fair and equal. To be a senator, you have to be 30 years of age. The other house is the House of Representatives. While the Senate is based on equal numbers, this one is based off representation. Your state gets a certain number of representatives depending on the number of people living in your state. This ensures that the states with larger populations get more say than states with smaller populations. To be a representative, you've got to be 25 years old. Article 1 also establishes the powers that Congress has, what they can and can't do. They're the ones that get to try any and all cases of impeachment against the president. Congress also gets the power to set taxes, borrow money, and regulate trade with other nations, establishing also the rules for naturalization. Congress also has to create money. They're the ones who print the money. They created the post office, and they promote science along the way. All of that's built into Article 1. Congress is also the only body that can create arm and declare war with the army. This branch's task, in its most basic terms, is to create laws. The laws it creates are subject to the approval of the president and the legality of the Supreme Court. So we're going to start seeing some mixing in between the branches.
Article 2.
The next part of the Constitution establishes the office of the president, and it declares the powers given to that president. So to be president, you have to be a natural-born citizen of the United States, born to American parents, and you have to be at least 35 years old and have lived within the United States for 14 years. So that means that you can be born to American citizens outside the United States, but still be president, like Obama. But you can't be born to Canadian parents and become president, because Canadians aren't actually Americans. They're nicer. The order of succession is also established in this article. One of the powers of the president is that he's the commander of all military forces within the U.S. and can call upon advisors to help in decision-making processes. He or she, girls can be president too, can make treaties with other countries if he can get 2/3 approval from Congress. The president shall also give Congress an update on the State of the Union. So every year the president lets Congress know how the country's doing. The president's job overall is to enforce the laws created by Congress. So the president can appoint Supreme Court justices, but his appointments are also subject to the approval of Congress.
Article 3.
The third article establishes our final branch of the U.S. government, the judicial branch. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the country and is granted the task of ensuring that all laws follow the rules established in the Constitution and serves at the highest level of judgment. When a lower court disagrees with the outcome of a case, the Supreme Court can take the case on. And this section also defines the terms of treason. The Supreme Court has the power to categorize laws as unconstitutional, as well as limit the power of the president to those given in the Constitution. So their job is to make sure that no matter what happens in the country, it meshes up with the Constitution.
Article 4.
The fourth article is built in response directly to the failures of the Articles of Confederation. This article describes the ways in which the states are related to each other and to the federal government. A big piece of this is the full faith and credit clause. Essentially, this tells everybody living in the country that states have to respect other states' laws. A big example of this in my area is radar detectors. You can purchase and use radar detectors in the state of North Carolina. But if you cross one state north into Virginia, they're illegal. Illegal to own or to use. So it's best to leave it at home. Just claiming that you're from North Carolina isn't going to get you out of the ticket. This article also establishes extradition between states. In other words, if you commit a crime in one state, let's say Texas, and you flee to another state, let's say Florida, they can send you back to the area in which the crime was committed. So you'd have to go from Florida to Texas. Planning ahead, the framers of the Constitution also built in a way to add new states and territories. The land of the United States had essentially jumped from the Proclamation line in 1763 all the way to the Mississippi River after the Revolutionary War. They knew they're going to be adding some states.
Article 5.
Realizing that the Constitution isn't going to be perfect always, the framers built in a method to change and fix the Constitution. This is detailed in the amendment process. There are two ways to change the Constitution. Neither of them is designed to be easy, but they also aren't designed to be impossible. I mean, we got 27 amendments right now, so the first way is the one that's always been used so far. 2/3 of Congress proposes a change to the Constitution. It bounces it to the states to either ratify or approve it. If 3/4 of the states agree to it, it's time to slap a sticky note on the Constitution. They don't actually do that. That would be messed up. This means that in the 1920s, when we passed Prohibition and banned alcohol, 2/3 of Congress thought it was a good idea, and so did at least 3/4 of the states. Federalism, the split between the power of states and federal government, is shown here. The federal government can suggest something, but then the states have to ratify it. The other way hasn't been used. This method skips Congress. If 2/3 of states push an amendment, it can then be bounced to the rest of the states for 3/4 of them to agree to. The weird thing is that once an amendment is proposed, there really isn't a time limit for approval. Congress can propose an amendment and then it just kind of hangs out there until it's ratified. The ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, is a perfect example. In 1972, it was approved by Congress, and it's still waiting for states' approval. We only need 5 more states to approve it.
Article 6.
This article has a couple of parts that are kind of built into it. First, it makes sure to adopt all the debts that were available under the Articles of Confederation. So all the states who were in debt because of the war, the federal government takes all of that and makes it their own. The second part is that it sets up the federal government as Big Daddy. I know that sounds weird, but what it does is it puts the federal government above all the states. Anything that the Constitution says outranks state laws. Keep this in mind when the idea of legalizing marijuana starts popping up. Technically, marijuana is still illegal under federal law. The third part requires that anyone who takes a government position has to swear or affirm that they are going to uphold, follow, and enforce the Constitution. If you're promising to uphold a law, you're agreeing to federal government supremacy.
Article 7.
The 7th article defines what it takes to make the Constitution the rules. At the time it was written, there are only 13 states. The article requires that 9 of those states approve the Constitution in order to make it official. The fact that it requires only 9 kind of implies that the other states, by agreeing to be part of the U.S., are drug into it whether they want to be or not. Alright, we finally covered all the parts of the Constitution. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see the Constitution, it wasn't quite working for everyone. It was quickly amended. The first 10 changes are called the Bill of Rights. Check out my amendments video to help you figure out what we changed and why we changed it. Let's jump on over to question of the day. If you could improve on the Constitution, what would you choose to change? How would you make some changes to the Constitution to make it work better? Let me know down in the comments below. Now before we go, we've got to hit up our subscriber of the week. This week I'd like to thank She's Cute or Whatever. Again, these names are hilarious. Thanks for subscribing. If you like what you've seen or found it helpful, click that like button. If you want to see more, ring the bell so you don't miss out on any new information. And as always, thanks for watching Learning with Sprayberry, where we make social studies fun, easy, and most importantly, educational. Thanks.
Oh.